cozy place to sleep at night. I need one and I'm down to fight for it. A brother sleeps outside again. The concrete is his only friend in the night. A policeman comes to wake him up. It's time to move his things again, and not again. And can I ask you, my friend, will homelessness ever end? It's time to pay the rent again. A struggle I would like to end with this song. Do corporations own it all? Or is it up to us to make the call? And tell me now if I'm wrong. When your neighbor moves out, 'cause they cannot figure out what to do anymore. Do you have to be rich for the right to exist, and for someone to care about you? Housing is a human right. There can be no fairness.
Welcome, everyone. We are so delighted to be together for virtual Social Justice Cafe. Many of you have been with us at Ner Shalom for our previous Social Justice Cafes, where we've had the opportunity to be together, to learn together about issues that are so vital to our community. And today we are really honored and delighted to have three leading experts in the issues of homelessness in our community. Adrienne LAUBY, Terry ROWAN, and Jeffrey HOFFMAN, and we will be introducing each of the panelists. What will, just to give you an idea of the shape of the afternoon, each of the speakers will present, and then we'll have a panel discussion among the three speakers, and then we'll have a question and answer period through the chat, and asking the panelists questions. We're just really delighted that everybody's taken time on a summer afternoon to be together for this very important issue that I know many of us feel very strongly about. I'd really like to thank everybody who is here for being here. I'd like to thank our panelists for making the time to come and educate us. I also want to thank the people who have donated, and I'll just mention, we'll put a little link in the chat, so if you want to donate during the event or after, SEDEC, which is the Social Justice Action Committee of Ner Shalom, we have always donated money that we've raised in the Social Justice Cafes to local organizations, and today's donations will go to Sonoma Applied Village Services. I think I'm saying that right, that Adrienne will tell us more about. So if you feel inspired, the money that we raise will go directly to serve the homeless population in Sonoma County. So I'd like to invite Rita Rowan to introduce our first speaker, Terry Rowan. Oh, I think you're muted.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is a joy to introduce you to my husband of 45 years, Terry Rowan. We have lived in Santa Rosa for 11 years. In his professional work life, Terry was an educator and an entrepreneur who started 3 companies. As a retired person, Terry has published 5 books and has another on the way. One of his books is called Why the US Can't and Won't Fix Homelessness and What the Rest of Us Can Do About It. Terry's entire focus is on eliminating homelessness. His talk is about the 3 big blocks to building adequate, affordable housing in Sonoma County and how we can turn that around. Also, Terry is a world record holder in his age group. He is first in the world in the 200-meter hurdles. So here's Terry. Thank you.
Yeah, that gets me a cup of coffee. Hello, Ner Shalom, and I'm very happy to be here and very grateful that this meeting is taking place, and I hope it's of some use to folks today. I want to send a quick kudo immediately to ADRIENNE, LAUBY, and Jeff HOFFMAN, 2 of my heroes, my local heroes, who every day in their operations and their separate operations do something that helps alleviate some of the terrible and really unnecessary pain that's all over our county because of homelessness. Yeah, my focus is on creating a structure that would end the county of homelessness, and that seems pretty utopian and overwhelming, but I think it's urgently necessary. You know, as a technical matter, we, the people, of course, know how to build low-income housing, and we know how to provide healthcare, and we know how to train people for jobs. So why don't we just get on with it and build housing for those who need it? Well, the reasons we don't in Sonoma and actually all over California and all over most of the United States is not because of the things we know how to do. It's about money. The biggest reason we don't fix homelessness locally is because the people who have a stranglehold on land use policy don't want to build such housing. It's not that they're practicing racism or exclusionary behavior, it's just that they're making money this way. And most of these individuals and groups who oppose this low-income housing are affiliated with a single association, and that would be called the Business Alliance. You should Google it, Sonoma Business Alliance. They include realtors, developers, high-end builders, some trade unions, commercial banks like the Burbank Bank that has over $2 billion in loans out right now for housing, almost none of it for low-income housing. Wealthy investors, and these folks collectively see Sonoma County as a brand. A brand is a term that's used in business a lot, but counties have brands too. And it's about a vision of who we are, what we're about. For the Business Alliance members involved in housing, Sonoma's brand is about hospitality, leisure, large single-family zoned homes for the wealthy, rolling hills, expensive restaurants in Healdsburg, spas, hotels, wine and cannabis. That's our brand. Low-income housing presents very few opportunities to make any significant money for these folks, and it certainly does not fit the brand. Now, these folks from the Business Alliance are not pirates. They're not evildoers. They're just your normal run-of-the-mill business folks who have planned their way over 2 generations to control the permitting process, so that 90% of all the homes that actually get built in the 4 largest cities in Sonoma County are single-family zoned homes starting in the 800,000s and going up to the millions. That's 90% of all the homes that actually get built. You might ask, can't anybody get a permit who's credentialed and so on? Yeah, it's true. You can go down and get a permit. Can you get it built? after you get a permit, lots of hurdles are in your way, such as environmental rules, neighborhood resistance, funding falls apart, and so on. So that the actual structures that get built are mostly for the wealthy, 90%. So teachers, nurses, social workers, don't come here. There's no place for you, including the old existing stock. They're too expensive too. Now, the Business Alliance folks are not only know what they want to do, but they know what they don't want, and they lobby very, very hard to get rid of what they don't want. One of those examples was SB 50. SB 1. That's a bill, a Senate Bill 1 that was sponsored by the 2/3 Democrat control of both House and Senate. And the bill died 3 times in committee and then couldn't even get out of committee. And last year in 2020, it was voted down on the floor. This is 2/3 supermajority. They don't need any Republican votes, and they couldn't get it past the Democrats. Why? Because they were lobbied vociferously, a hailstorm of lobbying that came from supervisors, including our supervisors, voted against SB 1. And the Business Alliance, and the arguments were very familiar. One, don't you state folks tell us local folks how to do housing. That sounds a little familiar to me if I was in Birmingham, Alabama, telling the federal government not to come in on voting rights. And the second one is we want to preserve the ambience of our local neighborhoods, and that doesn't include ugly low-income apartments. Now that this latter point concludes in segregated housing, which it does, comes as a big surprise to a lot of liberals. Santa Rosa is pretty heavily ghettoized, with 80% of its Hispanic population living in southwestern Santa Rosa, where you can find 3 elementary schools that are 70% Hispanic, contrasted with, for instance, several white schools over on this northeastern part that are almost 85% white. How does that happen? How does that happen? It's a function of zoning. It's a function of economics. You throw people into sections and their schools reflect that. This is not true just to Sonoma, this is true all over California. So since the entrepreneurs who make money on scarce, expensive housing dominate that industry, is the government filling in? Do the supervisors propose low-income housing? No, they don't. On the contrary, they not only take significant financial support from the Business Alliance during their campaigns, but they do so with the unspoken agreement to leave such business proposals for housing to the Business Alliance. In addition, they're personally terrified that if they were actually to propose a bond issue to fund needed low-income housing, it wouldn't pass, and that they might be swept out of office to boot. So why do the supervisors believe that a lot of local folks, not just the wealthy, but middle-class homeowners, would vote down bond issues? Well, they get shouted down when they go propose any kind of something for the homeless or low-income housing. Many homeowners, it could be, certainly there's some racism in that reaction among homeowners, but many homeowners also understand that they live in a deliberately contrived, scarce housing environment. Nothing's being built except houses for the wealthy. That means that if you bought a house in the college district 30 years ago for $150,000, it's gone up 5 times, 5-fold in 20 years. That has become, for many middle-class homeowners, the most significant asset they own. So they're not interested in having low-income housing come in locally. So we have these 3 big blocks. Holy mackerelli, Terry, what are you calling for? A change in land use policy, a change in fearful supervisors, a change in NIMBYism, a change in racism? If you ignore those things and think you can solve homelessness by some other means, please, you'd have to explain that to me. I'm calling for, only have a minute.
Mhm.
I'm calling for something new. I would like to see a grand convention. It would take 4 weekends. It's not a conference. It's not a seminar. It's an intense series of workshops. If you've ever been in a branding exercise, I'll tell you about it if you ask me a question later. What we would do is study how to break down these 4 big blocks, these 3 big blocks, and how we would organize and how we would get funded. I don't have the time at the exact moment with details, but I have them. I've spent 4 years studying them. I know how to do this. And it would be an intense experience for us because the road we're on right now, I don't see that unless an organization which is super organized to take this on, which currently does not exist, where this is going to change. So ask me questions later. I'll be happy to answer them. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Terry. And we look forward to having you in conversation with the other panelists and having a chance to explore some of the ideas you presented more as the afternoon goes on. I'd like to introduce Jeff Hoffman, who is the directing attorney at Santa Rosa Office of California Rural Legal Assistance, or CRLA. He is a graduate of the University of Wisconsin and Santa Clara University School of Law. He's been an attorney in the field of public interest and social justice since 1985 and has been with CRLA in Santa Rosa since 2004, specializing in housing, indigent health, and government benefits law. CRLA is a nonprofit legal aid program that has been serving low-income rural communities throughout California for over 50 years. Their mission is to fight for justice and individual rights alongside the most exploited communities of our society. Since 1967, the Santa Rosa CRLA office has provided assistance to low-income residents of Sonoma County and farm workers throughout Northern California. And Jeff has been working tirelessly on behalf of Sonoma County homeless population for several years now. So welcome, Jeff.
Well, thank you very much, and glad to be here. Welcome, everyone. So what I wanted to do, I'll kind of give you a synopsis. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the causes of homelessness, and issues behind that. And then I'm going to kind of take the legal approach, since that's predominantly been kind of my angle, if you will, as to how I've been involved in this issue, and maybe just give some background of the legal issues relating to homelessness and kind of try to bring that up to date in terms of what's going on now as we speak legally, and both, I guess more statewide. Really, California is kind of this, almost the center of a lot of what's going on legally and in general with homeless policy. We have a good percentage of the total US homeless population is in California. And then, I don't know, maybe talk about where can we go with this? How can we address these issues? Where there might be difficulties in doing that. So, I mean, this may be obvious, and in a sense, it probably is obvious that a major issue related to homelessness, especially in our area, is the lack of affordable housing. I know Terry definitely, has discussed that, and some of the background regarding that. In fact, 70%, I should mention, and I'm going to refer to this, but every year, in order to comply with guidelines for HUD funding, jurisdictions all over the country perform a homeless census and survey. And if you want, you can Google that for Sonoma County, but it'll give you a sense of, you know, how many homeless are there, who is homeless, you know, some of the statistics behind it. And it's a good reference point if you're, you know, wondering about what the issue looks like in this county. And again, you can look into it across the country as well. There's actually a report that is done, the American Homeless Assessment Report, that tallies all of the homeless surveys and provides that information to Congress. And that's called the AHAR, AHAR report. And just to say, I've looked at the last 10 years, Santa Rosa and Sonoma County have been in the top of their category of smaller metropolitan areas in the country for numbers of homeless, as well as numbers of chronically homeless, and often it varies by year, but numbers of veterans and homeless youth as well. So it's a significant problem in this county. And again, we are ranked nationally in terms of numbers of homeless. And so the problem, again, obviously, is a lack of affordable housing in this county. Again, 70% of the respondents to the homeless census indicated their inability to afford housing was the major obstacle to them being able to get housing. Some of the other factors that factor in are not only is there a lack of affordable housing, but it's just there's a high cost of living and a high cost to maintaining your housing in this county. And in fact, we're amongst the highest in the nation for cost burden related to housing. And again, this gets back to the issue of if you don't have enough income to be able to either afford housing or even to be able to stay in housing once you maybe would be able to find something. Other factors that figure in are disabilities, including especially mental illness. And in fact, I believe it's 40% of the homeless in this county have some type of disability. And I think the majority of those have mental disabilities, some of which may make it difficult for them to maintain permanent housing. So when you add that to not having the money as well, it makes it very difficult. Some of the other factors might be domestic violence, disasters, which have resulted in folks losing their homes. And then again, the difficulty of locating affordable housing becomes an issue. Unemployment, which during the pandemic was a major issue, and there's a lot of concern now with the pending evictions coming up. So there's a lot to talk about there. I have limited time, or we could go on all day just about some of these factors.
That's about 5 minutes.
Okay, let me switch over quickly to some of the legal aspects of homelessness. And really what we've been looking at in terms of our legal challenges is the US Constitution, the Fourth Amendment, protection against unlawful searches and seizures, protects homeless persons and their personal possessions. And so there needs to be a legal process behind that, a reasonable process or a warrant before items can be seized or destroyed. And what's generally been acceptable is there needs to be a procedure, notice, what we call bagging and tagging, or taking possessions and storing them, including bulky possessions, for at least 90 days. Before things are being just taken and destroyed sort of summarily. The Eighth Amendment applies to this situation. The Eighth Amendment protects persons from cruel and unusual punishment. And so in the context of enforcement actions against homeless persons who may be violating anti-camping laws or other laws relating to people who are outside, basically, so long as there is a greater number of homeless individuals than the number of available shelter beds, then you are precluded from prosecuting folks or punishing them for being on the street and violating some of these ordinances. And, you know, a key factor is there should be some sort of practically available shelter that's available for someone. And to the extent there isn't, then you cannot enforce these laws, and folks need to stay where they are. And I'll come back to that in a little bit, but that's, I think, where there's a lot of tension. And this ruling is related to the case of Martin versus Boise, which I'm sure a lot of folks have heard about, and that is the holding in the case. You know, obviously there's a lot more to it, but when you break it all down, that's what it comes down to. And that is the law, at least in the western part of the United States, and maybe even throughout the United States, since the Supreme Court declined to take up and review that ruling. Some other areas are the 14th Amendment due process clause, which protects against putting government policy that puts people in an unusual or unreasonable danger, which if you're sweeping people, then you're going to be moving them away and putting them in perilous positions, especially if the weather is bad. Another area is the Americans with Disabilities Act, which prevents discrimination on the basis of disability in government services and accommodations. And what we've been arguing is that you would have what's called a right to a reasonable accommodation in government services based on your disability to be able to allow you to access services. And what we further argued is that to the extent that your disability might prevent you from being able to be placed in certain kinds of shelter that might be offered, then you should be able to be excused from that placement instead of being forced to be placed in a shelter situation that may exacerbate your disability. And again, that's a tension area related to what's been going on legally in our case that we have, as well as in other jurisdictions.
It's about 1 minute.
Okay. I guess maybe I'll just say a few words. So what, you know, when I talk about these tension areas, you know, with the Boise case, what we're seeing is, and with the settlement in our case, is that there needs to be an assessment in terms of if you're going to bring an enforcement action, are there available shelter options for folks and other procedures that need to go into place related to assuring that people don't unreasonably and unlawfully lose their possessions. The result of this is it may be a process or take a while to assess everybody in an encampment. It may allow encampments to grow larger, which then can create further issues related to public health and safety. And that's where a lot of the tension in our cases right now, that for instance, during the COVID crisis, where the shelter has been closed due to a COVID outbreak, there aren't places to place people. So absent that, encampments might grow larger and create further concerns. And I think, you know, in terms of solutions, I'll just quickly say that obviously building more permanent supportive housing, maybe SROs or other types of housing, is really the solution. There's really a complete lack of options. There's long waits to get into that housing. And most, if not all, people would welcome being able to have a permanent place to live. Of the folks that we work with in terms of homeless folks, I think where we really need to look is how can we manage some of these encampments where there aren't other options for placement, and allow for temporary sanctioned encampments that will work in a way that won't create hazards. And I think that's where the community needs to come in, and where the local officials need to come in to figure out a way to do that. Safe parking has been discussed, and at some point maybe will be implemented. That's one way to manage, and maybe to have smaller encampments similar to Los Gallegos and other areas. But the key is being able to manage those in a way that doesn't create hazards. So anyway, a lot more that I could say, but I think I may be at my limit, so I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Jeff. And where you ended up there talking about specific things that are happening in our community and also nationally that we can be looking at as potential solutions. Maybe that's something we can explore in the panelist discussion and throughout the afternoon. So thank you. And I'd like to turn it over to Esther to introduce Adrienne.
Hello, everybody. Adrienne LAUBY has been on the forefront for years, working to improve the lives of the unsheltered in Sonoma County, including co-founding the activist group Homeless Action and being the board president of Sonoma Applied Village Services, creating community programs and services. So I'd like to introduce Adrienne LAUBY.
Thank you, Esther, and thank you, everybody. Thank you for the Civic and the Social Justice Cafe. Thank you for all of you for coming. And I want to thank you again, Esther, for making me feel so welcome to this cafe. I want to start by introducing you to some homeless people. So to do that, I'm going to share my screen. And here we go. This is Ludmilla Bade, and she is an expert on bureaucracy. She's a member of the Sonoma County Continuum of Care Board, which determines literally millions of dollars in homeless funding that comes from the state and federal government. She is an expert on, I can't tell you how fast she has gotten to understand the intricacies of trying to get along with bureaucrats and give them what they need so that homeless people can get what they need. And all of the people I'm going to introduce you, like Ludmilla, are formerly homeless. And I've done that on purpose because there's a lot of shame and stigma that goes along with homelessness. And I don't want to out anybody that, you know, whether they want to or not, it's usually not a very good idea. So these folks have all been housed at this point, but they're recently have been homeless. This is Victoriana's. Hers reads, "Do not avert eyes. It is important that you see this. It's important that you feel this." And that's the theme of my talk today. Victoria is an attorney, and she has appeared in court on behalf of homeless people who have received the kind of infractions and tickets that homeless people just tend to pile up. Almost everything they do is on some level illegal. Well, we skipped somebody here. This is Albert Bruin. Albert, you might think, oh, this is a more typical homeless person. This is more the stereotype. He's an older guy. He's got a beard. And you see him over here in the one picture looking very bereft. And Albert was and is a local person who was very involved in community gardening. And this van over here is where he was living, and it was towed away. So you're seeing the remains of his possessions after the Sonoma County Police Department towed his van. And this is probably going to surprise you if you're not familiar with this, that when I used to think about being homeless, you know, oh, the worst comes to worst. Well, I've got my car. I can live in my car. And what I didn't realize then is that living in your car on the streets of any of our Sonoma County highways or in our cities it's very difficult. The police move you around. You're not really allowed. You're illegal to sleep in your car pretty much everywhere. So it's very easy. And this happens to a lot of homeless people. Their vehicles run out of registration, or they have a mechanical problem. They can't afford it. And the police just come and tow and take away your home. Albert got housing through COTS, which is the Petaluma nonprofit and shelter. The other people who got housing were through the Living Room, which is a nonprofit for at-risk homeless women and children. And the last one was through SHARE. And SHARE is a fantastic group that finds empty houses and empty little master bedrooms in people's homes and matches people up with them. So you might be thinking, well, I've heard of them, or maybe I haven't heard of them, but I know other nonprofits. There's a lot of nonprofits in Sonoma County, including my own Sonoma Applied Village Services, which we call SAVES. But why doesn't that fix the problem? And I think Jeff really laid it out very well, that there are 300,000 people homeless in Sonoma County. And all of these nonprofits, with all of their wonderful help and efforts, we can only help about 1,000 of those people. So that means 2,000 are out tonight, like every night, without any kind of safety, without a bathroom. I just got to say that again, without a bathroom. It's really hard to take it in how important that is. Jeff mentioned some of this, but I want to highlight that more people of color in proportion to the population are homeless than white people. And they get less help from homeless services than white people. So racism is certainly alive and well in Sonoma County. Finally, the COVID-19 situation, these figures come from the CDC, the federal government, back
5 minutes, Adrienne.
Thank you. Back before the Delta variant. They're twice as likely to be hospitalized if they get COVID-19, and they're 2 to 3 times as likely to die. And this correlates with the biggest statistic, which is that people who are homeless generally die 30 years sooner than people who are in homes. So we have a solution at SAVES. It's a mid-level solution. We want to see apartments being built. We want to attack the levers of power and money that Terry so eloquently talks about. But in the meantime, we want to get people inside. And we watched this after the fires, where we all understood, we all in Sonoma County, we said, well, this is outrageous. We have to help these people. And we opened the fairgrounds, we opened evacuation centers. We got everybody inside. And what we'd like to do is have little villages, tiny villages all over Sonoma County. I think it's not that useful to have 2,000 people in one big spot, but a few people here, a few people there, it's a lot of difference. And so we're talking about safe parking, which could be just overnight. You can bring your car here, sleep, and leave in the morning. RV parking, which is 24/7, because you just really can't move an RV that easily. Or modular housing, or these tiny houses that you may have seen at Los Guilicos. It's basically a bedroom with a lock on the door. These can be put up and managed in villages. And Jeff, thank you for talking about sanctioned encampments. They do need to have some management, but in some ways they don't need as much as a lot of people think. Homeless people are very creative. They're people, they're humans, they're not children. They don't need to be in semi-jails. They don't need to be in very confined spaces. They need to be somewhere where they can use their skills and their experiences. And here's a little example. This is a homeless built a very busy corner in Santa Rosa for many, many months. And I just love this because you see, not only does this guy, has he provided for himself a safe place to be at night, but he has a sense of aesthetics. And you see that all over in various and small places where people take pride where they live. This is a quote from Sonoma County, South Sonoma County, where I live. It's David Rabbit. It costs $62,000 a year to keep someone home, only $22,000 to get them into a house. So this is why we have to do this urgently, not only for humanity and morality, which is really the strongest reasons, but it is because it's also financially much better. Something you may not know is that approximately a third of homeless people sleep in their vehicles now. And if that vehicle is an RV, they have a house. It may need to be hooked up because their bathroom doesn't work, or it may need some other things, but they have a house. And it's just criminal that we tow these houses away and crush them. The cost of building a small apartment in a low-income complex is $300,000 to $500,000. Cost of building one of these little tiny homes in a tiny village is $5,000 to $8,000. So that's the biggest difference. And that's why we say, let's get this done, get it done quickly. And then, you know, as we are, not in addition, not at the same time, we are building low-income housing, which is desperately needed. I don't think I need to tell you all that. You're all in the housing market. People always want to know what they can do. And thank you for coming. I'm assuming a bunch of you came because you want to know what to do. So there's a few things that you can always do. One is to look at the stereotypes.
One more minute.
Thank you. When you hear people talking about those people or the homeless, ask them what they really know. And, you know, maybe you want to introduce them to one of the three people I introduced you to today. Homeless people are individuals, and all the stereotypes you hear are just that, stereotypes. You can support one of these tiny villages in your own house, in your own neighborhood, not necessarily in your own house, but in your own neighborhood. Do that by contacting your representative at your city level or county level. Finally, when you see a homeless person, talk to them. Just say hi, say smile, say how you doing, and see if you can have a conversation. This happens for a lot of people do this, and I'm really proud of our county for how many. And a lot of people end up becoming acquaintances or friends with homeless people and do things like, oh, I'll take you out to lunch once a week, or let me bring you coffee tomorrow. This effort to be a community and to keep people in our community, all people I introduced you to came to Sonoma County. They lived here when they became homeless. So these are our community members, friends and family. Bring them into our lives. We appreciate it. Thank you. I look forward to talking more.
Thank you so much, Adrienne. Just appreciate everything that you're doing and helping us understand how we can become more involved and really practically support and help. So we're going to transition into our panel discussion, and Elaine Leader will moderate.
We have about 15 minutes, and we are going to ask the three speakers to ask each other questions. And then when we've completed that, we will take questions from the chat, and Esther will take care of asking those. So how about if the three of you start talking to each other? Begin.
Well, I have a question for both Adrienne and Jeff. Can I ask Adrienne a question first?
Sure.
Adrienne, as usual, every time I see you, just terrific. Just you're the guy. You know your stuff better than anybody. I have a concern, as I have expressed to you privately many times. I've done in the last 4 years 6 to 7 focus groups all over Sonoma County with a wide array of people who live here on attitudes. Especially, I wanted to know why so many middle-class people were so furious about low-income housing. I did about 40 interviews, personal interviews. I have documents, I have inches of this stuff. I learned a lot. One of the things I'm concerned about is an exclusive focus on, as an example, villages, small villages for homeless people, does not take into effect that they are the tip of a spear about housing in general in this county, that we have thousands upon thousands of people crammed into apartments who can't afford them. That's why they crammed in there, they're workers, that they are 2 paychecks away from being on the street. And I'm very, very worried that were you to, what the function of building small villages says to the power brokers, you're okay. We're not confronting you. Keep going with your housing policy the way it is. Supervisors, you don't have to worry about raising money for real housing. We can do villages all over town. We'll find ways of funding that. We'll get mental health care somehow. It's, to me, avoiding the real central issue, which is nobody's being held accountable who has power in the county for the way things are. What do you feel about that?
Well, Terry, I thought you were going to give me like a softball question. Go for it, right on. Well, here's what I think. It's not one or the other. I mean, these tiny villages are going to have to be funded. So we're going to have to go to the supervisors and to the powers that be to get money for it. And I think we have to make the very strong pitch and the strong case all along. This is not where we want people to end up. This is a place for emergency shelter, essentially. And there's no reason why we can't have emergency shelter and low-income housing. I think the one thing I think that will help on that aspect is that right now, a lot of us are very afraid of being homeless, and we're afraid of homeless people. We see them as other. And when we manage to have tiny villages in every neighborhood or in every town, people are going to get to know homeless people as individuals. And I think, well, there's 2 things. One, they're going to see them as homeless individuals. They're not going to see them as, you know, I don't know, the whole list. I'm not even going to say it because it's just an icky list. But then they start to say, oh, what can I do? And that includes lobbying your supervisor, lobbying your council representative. But the other thing is that when you see these tiny villages will be the same as all these low-income housing things. People will be angry, they'll be afraid, and we just had one in my neighborhood on Arthur Street in Cotati. Oh my gosh, you thought the world was going to end because they were going to put 5 homeless people in a little apartment building. Now it's there, nobody even knows it's there.
Right.
So that's going to be true with these villages as well. They're going to be, you know, it's unless you're someone who's doing volunteer work there, you're not going to see them. And I'm hoping that will also soften up and provide this stronger, like there's this idea that the minute you do it, your property values decline, which is not true.
Not true.
It's not true. Anyway, that's my longish answer to your longish question. And I see Jeff is like leaning forward. So I mean,
well, maybe I can add just a little bit, but I think you covered it. You know, what we have right now, again, there's such a dearth of available permanent supportive housing or permanent housing that we have 3,000 people homeless, 2,000 on the street, you know, on any given night. And it's not a solution to keep moving them around from one place to the other. It's expensive. It creates, I think, more problems than it solves. And so we need this as a stopgap. The idea would be and should be that this is not a permanent solution. It's in a sense, it's a Band-Aid, but it's what you might call a humane way to address this emergency. But I guess it would be up to, you know, us in the community and the powers that be, so to speak, to muster our power, if you will, to keep the pressure on. It's just a longer term process to get the more permanent housing built. But in the meantime, there needs to be a viable solution. You know, there's also been talk that, well, you set up these temporary solutions, and then that gives the city and the county sort of the freedom to be able to say, well, anyone who's not in those, we can just do whatever we want because we've got these set up. And again, And so therefore we don't like that as a solution, but there needs to be a way to make this work, because it really, it's the only real viable, humane solution to this emergency. I mean, it really is, like you said, Adrienne, you know, it's an emergency that needs to be addressed with emergency measures. And it's an affordable, easily managed way to do it. So the hope is, at least with the Boise case, you know, at least with the idea that you have to have a place for someone to go, I feel that because this tension has come up, I've heard in other communities across California and maybe around the country, mostly in California, I've heard. And again, it's the issue of how do you manage these encampments, because now you've got to have a place for someone to go. And again, this is a realistic solution to that. So
my concern with this, though, is that to a supervisor or a developer or a builder who's profiting right now from scarce housing, your proposals for intermediate housing, small villages, don't really make a substantial difference in his mind. They're the same thing between really going out and getting housing. He's opposed to housing, small housing for 80% of the population. That's the thing I worry about and how to shift it. I want to ask Jeff a question if I can.
sure.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
This is a document that came out yesterday. It was an insert in the newspaper. It's called 2021 Spotlight on Sonoma County Schools. It's done by the school district. It's really interesting because it says in page 3, diverse students, inequitable outcomes. This is their own report on their own school district. It says that among all the students currently enrolled in schools in Sonoma County, 46.6% are Hispanic and 41.5% are white. As a lawyer, I'm asking you, why do we have 3 schools in one area of town that have 70 to 80% Hispanic population in, and 2 schools in the Northeast area, an elementary and a high school, that have 85 to 90% white? Why isn't that de facto segregation? And why aren't we authoring a lawsuit?
Well, it's complicated. We did bring a lawsuit against the Santa Rosa City Schools when they closed down the Doyle Park School a few years ago in order to put in the French American charter school.
Right.
Obviously very clear that they were getting rid of the Latino students, saying you can go with your people in all the other schools, and we're bringing in not too many Latino students who wanted to learn French culture as part of their grade school upbringing. But it's very difficult because right now what's going on, and again, we're kind of getting a little afield of the homelessness issue, but there is a freedom of choice to go to the schools that you want to. And I think that's really what the result is that people are going where they want to.
No, Jeff,
I mean, that's a simple answer, but
it's not a side issue. It's
You have
inextricably
5 minutes, people, 5 minutes left for this discussion.
the issue of homelessness and housing and schooling inextricably bound together. You go to the school you're at because of economic choices that you must make. That's why that's the linkage. I don't hear in our discussion how we address powers that be right now. I get Adrienne, and I'm totally for it, and I hear the legal arguments that you're involved in.
All right,
I
so
don't.
we've got a few minutes. Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Okay, so I love this convention idea. If we have a weekend to talk about homelessness for any reason, I'll be there. But
Good.
I hear what you're saying. I mean, first of all, I want to thank you. Thank you for being the one to call out the rich and powerful, because then I don't have to, and I appreciate that. But to do that, we're going to have massive outrage. And there is outrage among a core group of people who are out here, you know, doing stuff all the time. But the general population is still accepting, you know, like they didn't accept it for the fire victims, but they accept it for homeless people. This is the conditions of your life. So how are we going to build a movement that is strong enough to do what you suggest?
It's a great question. The first thing to do is that, first of all, I have uncovered in my own research that there's much more latent interest in solutions, real solutions, among many, many people in Sonoma than they're given credit for. There's an awful lot of people who walk past homelessness with hearts broken. They just don't know what to do about it. It just seems like too immense a problem and they just can't locate who to get after. We need a super organization. Let me tell you something, well, I won't. A super organization which, while you're doing what you're doing with interim mini housing villages, and while Jeff is pursuing constitutional law cases that could have profound implications, we need a supra, S-U-P-R-A group that's organized, it's loaded with talent, and it knows how to bring pressure, constant pressure on the banks, the people who are funding this, the wealthy people who are profiting from it, the developers and the builders. They have to get involved in the solution. We can't leave them out. They're not the enemy. We have to get to them and convert them, and we can. We don't need all of them. But that group has to start. And I am so frustrated because I feel as if I cannot get a voice on this. And I know this talent exists in this county. There's tons of it. This temple, when it faced COVID and couldn't meet, discovered how to use Zoom. And now they run it like a TV studio. This is just one or two people, and they've done this. There's talent all over this county. We need to get it organized. I want to do that with somebody. I'm calling for a convention. You keep doing what you're doing. Please, Adrienne, both of you, Jeff. I want to do other things with you, not around you, with you.
Awesome. And maybe, you know, we got 42 people here. I'm happy if somebody wants it, more than somebody will step up to this task, because I think it is really a needed task.
Thank you.
Good one.
We
And
just
Jeff,
have 1 minute left.
I just got to thank you, because you've done so much work to get that injunction going in Santa Rosa. And it really has made a huge difference for homeless people. It's one of the most effective things I think we've done in the 8 years I've been doing this. So I don't have, except let's do it more. Can we do it more?
Well, on that note, I will turn it now over to Esther for questions from the chat and from other places for our three panelists.
So I'm going to read you a couple questions that I have, and some from the chat. So I invite people to ask questions and to please ask the panelists not to answer them in the chat so that I can read it out loud. Thank you. So the first question is, it seems like a lot of people don't care about the issue of homelessness because they are not seen every day as they are in San Francisco. People are not stepping over them as they come out of work or out of their homes. And so the issue of homelessness can be completely vanish in their minds. So if you could talk about that.
Well, I will say that I agree with Terry that there is a latent power here and a lot of people who do care. We talked to 500 people in small groups in Santa Rosa a couple of years ago and asked them, what's your experience with homeless people? And it was remarkable how many people were involved individually with homeless people and how much they wanted to do something and be part of something. I think that there's also just a fear, and it comes from the rich and the poor problem that we have in this country, that if you fall off of your safety net, you will be homeless. And so many people I know worry, I'm going to live in the gutter. And I go, wait, don't you have any friends? You probably won't end up in the gutter. You've got some safety net of your own. But that fear that just comes, that's sort of to make you scared, keep you in your job, keep you working hard and being a productive member of society, that causes people then to look at homeless people and say, well, one, there must be something wrong with them. Or two, I can't be involved in that because it's too close to home.
Bravo.
Yeah, I mean, I think, if you look in the newspapers, I follow the news, I follow all the sweeps that take place. It's in the news a lot locally. When there's been about 10 or 15 or so sweeps, and a lot of them made the papers. So it's a very visible problem, even if it's not in your backyard. And the idea is that even if it's not directly in your backyard, it needs to be looked at as a community issue, as a community problem that needs to be addressed by the community. And again, in terms of managing these small villages or even just encampments on the street, it's a community issue that it's affecting the community and needs to be managed by the community on those levels, as well as just the idea of putting pressure on, your representatives to support the programs like Adrienne's that she's proposing, or safe parking, and not to have the situation that Terry's alluding to. I don't know how else to put it, but I think that to the extent we have this problem, it just affects the whole community in a lot of different ways. I think it's certainly, if we're going to have a brand of being this playground for wine and rest and relaxation, having encampments all over the place certainly doesn't mesh with that. So I would think, to the extent you want to support that brand, why not help, support these communities and these encampments, so that maybe we can eventually not need them. In a sense, if you want to look at it that way. So I don't know. Again, maybe not a complete answer, but just a few thoughts.
I have had experience recently in two large organization, groups where I was giving little talks, and I asked people to hold up their hand if they had friends or family members who were homeless or at risk of homelessness. And it was shocking to me, about 70% of each of these audiences. So we could probably do that exercise here, but we are all very affected by it.
Yeah. And as I said, we have some of the highest percentages in the country of people who are cost burdened for housing. So we have a lot of people that are at risk. So anyway, go ahead, Terry.
That's the key, Adrienne, to the identifying. I had more than one person in a focus group tell me that if he were homeless, he would rather die. It is a terrible fear that lots more people have than you can imagine. And the way to attach that and get it is not to frighten them, with the specter of these horrible people, these zombies living downtown. It's that they're us. They're us. The solution, you're right, Jeff, the solution is a community solution. We're not making that appeal. No supervisor's making that appeal. Susan Gorin said when they removed the people from the Joe Rodota Trail, her comment to the press was, "We spent a fortune on those people." That plays to resentment.
Okay,
Yeah.
next.
I think,
I'm sorry.
go ahead.
We have other questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, another question from our group. What are the specific ways we can support the encampments and safe parking? Who do we call? What do we do?
So you can, I put in the chat my personal email and our organization saves. You can, there's places there you can sign up for things to help. We have a weekly meeting of Homeless Action every Monday morning that you can get a lot of information about a lot of things. So if you want a kind of soft place to get involved and find out more, that's a good place. Just email me. I'll invite you. Everyone's welcome to that.
Yeah, the way that support can be provided, and I think SAVES has been involved with this, and I've seen them there at all the encampments, especially when sweeps are imminent, and Homeless Action and Sonoma County Acts of Kindness is another organization, and they're providing food. They've also in the past, and I don't know exactly how much today, but providing possibly porta potties, if possible, or washing stations or trash pickup or assisting with that. And these are ways that can help lessen the potential health threats that might arise, you know, but it takes volunteers, it takes people who are willing to advocate. If the city is saying, you know, no, we're not going to let you put those out there, or we're not going to let you do that, then you may need to push back on that. Because again, my feeling is that it's manageable, obviously not permanently. These are not permanent solutions, but temporary manageable solutions. So,
I have a real quick one for you. In March, I managed to organize the street Rita and I live on to quote, adopt a homeless guy we picked at random. His name is Walt. And so this is August. So 6 months later, the purpose, 5% of the purpose was to supply goods and services to Walt, to let him know that people cared about him. 95% was to get my neighbors talking. And oh boy, did I get talk back. It's 14 houses. It's like the Israeli Knesset, 150 people, 500 votes. We had so much dialogue going on the street, including one all out, you're a crazy person for doing this. These people are takers, all that. But here's the thing, 9 out of the 14 houses participated every single week in collecting food. More than that, they got involved in heavy conversations. To this day, Walt turned out to have a big time heart attack on the street. Was in the, that's a long story for another day. He's recovering. But the thing is, that discussion is still going on. You want to soften up your neighborhood? I have a whole document for you. Get in touch with me after this is over. I'll help you adopt somebody. Get your neighborhood talking about vans, parking, homelessness, hunger, punishment, suffering. Boy, will they talk about it. And you'll get a lot of very good feedback.
Thank you. Another question. Is it helpful for us to give money to homeless when they are panhandling or not?
I always do. I feel like if someone is out there asking for money, I'm going to give them $1. And I don't worry about where they spend it. You know, whatever it is, it's not going to be so much. I just do it.
Me too.
yeah, me too.
So another question, can you talk about the state of the mental health services for the homeless?
Oh, we're just going to cry. Mental
Right.
health services in the county are so pathetic for anyone without money. And, you know, there are some places where there's a nonprofit called Buckaloo that tries to house people with chronic mental illness. And there's supportive housing with staffing. People have set that up in the last couple decades. So there's some help out there, but like everything, it has a lot of waiting lists. It's hard to get into, and it's just doesn't even begin to touch the problem.
Yeah, I think, you know, Measure O passed, which I think is a good thing. But when you look at the amounts that are involved, it's not a lot. But I mean, it does help, I think. And I'm hopeful for that. I mean, as a starting point. I mean, just that awareness of the need.
Well, it's
so-
funding like cahoots type stuff so that the police won't go out to mental health calls. So people who have mental health crises won't get shot. So we're really happy about that. That's an advance.
So if you look at the difference between Medicare and private hospitals, so Medicare operates on a 3% margin. The Providence St. Joseph's Hospital operates on a 27% margin. After they pay everything in overhead, they make 15% profit. They have very little interest in outreach to homeless people who are mentally ill, very little. So when Walt had his heart attack and went to that hospital and stayed there for 2 weeks in the ICU, they showed me the bill. It was $1.5 million, which they wrote off. It's a paper bill. The outreach to prevent a heart attack, they're not interested. It's the way it works. That's the way American medicine works. It's a just ask anybody who's watching this what they're paying for their meds. And the answer, that's case closed. It's about money, lots of money.
So another question, we have an encampment that is starting in a parking lot. Are there any models for requesting services and portable bathrooms?
There's two that I know of. One is in Sebastopol, the Morris Street encampment, where the city of Santa Rosa or the city of Sebastopol put porta potties there, and they've been very supportive, porta potties and trash pickup. Santa Rosa has a program called CHAP. If you send me an email, I will send you lots of information. We can go back and forth on what you're thinking about, what you need. There are several people who use that program to help just for this exact thing.
Yeah, but I would also get in, if I could, just have contact saves or acts of kindness who have, worked with other encampments, to do it again, not on a, this is more informal than formal, and then try to outreach to, the city usually, I don't know what city this is in, but they usually have a housing department or a person within the department. I mean, it's good to just try to work with them if you can, rather than wait until, I guess, the police are coming out. But even if the police are there, you can try to work through them to try to see whether they're willing to allow it or work with your group to allow it. Again, I can't say I was involved in the logistics of how they were brought to other encampments that I've worked with, but those are just.
It says, Barbara and Max say it's in Roanoke Park, and if you contact me, there's specific things in Roanoke Park. I will tune you into it.
Yeah, and if this is a park and ride in Roanoke Park, give me a call.
Yes,
Okay. Another question. The county and city of Santa Rosa will make decisions on at least $10 million in homeless funding in the next few months. How do you suggest the viewers learn about and influence these decisions?
Well, we do talk about it in homeless action meetings every Monday morning. It kind of almost takes over our meetings a lot. So that's one way if you want to. I would say to contact your local supervisor and ask them who they see as the representatives of the supervisors on that group. And from there, you can get more information about how to talk to people. But I think starting with the supervisors they're powerful people.
Yeah, and then I think to follow the continuum of care and their meetings, they're the ones that administer the HUD funding for homeless services, which is a large amount of funding. I don't know if that's this track of funding that you're referring to. Otherwise, I mean, obviously cities and counties can have their own programs too. And again, to get in contact with the city staff person or follow the agendas and the meetings. And look at the staff reports and see what's what, and go to the meeting and speak out or find out more about it.
Now, if you Google continuum of care, Sonoma County continuum of care, you'll get information about the next meeting, whether it's committee or meeting of the whole.
So a follow-up question on that. What are the opinions of the supervisors on homelessness? Is Supervisor Rabbit a supporter of homeless to start with? And what do the other council people think? Not council people, but Board of Supervisors think?
I'm gonna let Terry have a break. I'm going to give Terry a moment here.
No, I mean, I don't know if that's, it's a good question, but I don't know if there's an answer that would, it doesn't matter much what they think. It's what they're doing. They're not doing anything. They're terrified of asking the big questions, and so we just lurch from year to year. We've had 20 forced removals. That's their policy. If you want to go see casual cruelty in action, just go watch one side. Just witness it. Watch the cops come in with their grim faces on, the huge equipment they bring in to collect stuff that they just don't care about and they throw out. They call it turfing. It's kicking the can down the road, and that's what the supervisors are doing. They're not dealing with the problem. So worrying about their sensibilities, whether they grieve at night, it just seems to me to be irrelevant. They're not doing anything.
So I would say there's a continuum, and Linda Hopkins is the most fervent supporter of homeless people, and she is working hard to try to get something set up in the West County. David Rabbit is on the other end of the continuum. He does talk well, and I've seen him in public meetings defending homeless people and refuting some of the stereotypes. Chris Corsi is also pretty good on this issue. Susan Gorin can be good or it can be bad. Like Terry says, it's really how the vote comes down. And I think they're massively influenced by the kind of feedback they get. They get a lot of complaints, and they don't get a lot of people saying, hey, we want solutions. We really want you to help and do something about this.
So another question, what projects to increase affordable and/or supported housing are in the works? What can you tell us about Caritas Village?
Caritas.
Oh, Caritas. Oh,
Yeah, sorry about the pronunciation.
Is that Catholic Charities?
Yes.
Yeah. There's a perfect model for you for something. That's 7 years old, that project. They're still missing $6 million in their initial need to complete that building. When it's done, it will house 135 individual apartments plus their downtown office. I know most of the people who raised money for it, and they're frustrated as heck. They can't get it across the finish line. When it's all done and said, it's something. It's 135 families off the street is better than having them on the street. There's 3,000 people out there, and there's thousands of others who could be out there. It's when we're not talking about solutions. We're not talking about what housing looks like for thousands of people in this county. Young people who can't afford anything here, who travels. I went to the teachers union. I polled them. The average teacher is in a car 150 miles a day to work here. Is this in everybody's interest? To not have the teachers of your children live in the same town because they can't afford it. So these are not solutions. Catholic Charities is the go-to outfit in town for continuum funds, all kinds of funds. I don't think they do a very good job. I can't find a single financial statement from them, not one that they publish, that tells me what it costs to do anything in that place. So to me, they're just working with, they're just the go-to guys because then everybody can say something's being done. We need housing policy. We need real dollars for developing real housing for thousands of people in this county who aren't getting it. That's what we need. We're not getting it.
So one more question to complete this. Why isn't more money poured into refurbishing motels to house the homeless? It wouldn't seem like such a big project, maybe. I mean, if you have a motel for 20 people or something, why isn't money funneled into that?
I would say that it is actually. The governor send us a lot of money to house people who were at risk of COVID, which many people who were homeless fit that category. And we bought 2 motels. So it costs money to refurbish them, to make them into permanent housing. And sometimes that money is missing, that link, that extra money. But the governor wants to spend more money on this. He's set some money up coming up into I think that's part of what our one question was about. We have a bunch of money coming. The feds are sending us more money. There's a desire for the first time since Ronald Reagan to get federal money out to communities to solve these problems. So the question is, the practicalities. Who wants to sell a motel? Is it a reasonable cost? Because you don't really want the taxpayers to pay some outrageous number, and then just getting it done. So I think we'll see something. It's a very exciting time actually right now. And looking at the Continuum of Care Board and talking to people there and getting involved there, if you're that kind of person who wants to be part of this massive solution that involves building and making things happen, there's an opportunity, and there's some nonprofits who will be involved in all that. Catholic Charities is one, West County Community Services, COTS, a lot of the larger ones in Burbank Housing, they do build houses and they know how to do it.
Well, on that note, I want to thank the panelists. I want to thank the audience, and I'm giving it back to Shoshana.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Terry and Adrienne and Jeff, for everything that you do, for your hard work every day for many years. And we will, I think Sherry will put a link in the chat again if you would like to donate through Ner Shalom to Saves. We are recording this program, so we're happy to share it with anyone who registered. And also on the Tzedek page through Ner Shalom, we'll have links to the different projects that we talked about today. So if you want to, and we'll have updates too. So if you're interested in being involved, that will be a place that you can go to, nershalom.org/tzedek, and we'll have links to the projects that we talked about today, and we'll do our best to keep that updated. We have an announcement, Rebecca Norwick, so if
I'm here.
Great.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Norwick, and I'm a member of Ner Shalom, but I'm also the president of the board of the Jewish Community Free Clinic, and we are looking for teens who are interested in social activism. We're going to have a youth engagement program we're recruiting right now, focusing on equity, diversity, and inclusion, and it's a learning and activity-based cohort beginning now and going for about 12 months. So they're going to be speakers, they're going to be projects. It sounds, my daughter's going to do it. And so if you know anyone who's interested, please give Donna an email, and I have put her email in the chat. This is the Jewish Community Free Clinic, and we have a youth engagement project.
Great. Thank you so much, Rebecca. Thank you for that good work. And I think that will wrap us up for today. We hope that everybody feels inspired to go out, and I was very moved to hear, Adrienne, how you ended with this is such a cutting edge time for homeless, for action to actually be being taken on homelessness, and is very inspiring for us to all go out and get involved. So thank you again for spending your afternoon with us, and we hope that we'll continue to work together as a community to support the good work going on.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Say bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Larry, thank you.
Thank you. Very good. Thank you.
Really great.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you, everybody, for